We're a very small program. It needs to probably grow as our market continues to grow. So we're talking a lot about this under the current climate where funding federal positions is being reviewed and reduced. But in this case, the National Organic Program is protecting 28,000 certified organic operations that are domestic. And we need that oversight. And it's very efficient program. So I think there's only 85 employees, or there were before we lost this last 20 to 30%. And the return on investment for our economy is huge.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast. I'm Lindley Dixon, co-director of the Real Organic Project. We're a grassroots, farmer-led movement with an add-on organic food label to distinguish organic crops grown in healthy soils and organic livestock raised on well-managed pasture, all without synthetic fertilizers and toxic chemicals. You just heard from Kate Mendenhall, Executive Director of the Organic Farmers Association. Kate has spent her career working to protect organic integrity from inside the system, helping build a national coalition of certified organic farmers who are pushing back against the weakening of USDA standards. Today, we talk about why farmer leadership is critical and what's at stake across the globe if the spirit of the organic movement loses out to the greed of industrial players. Kate Mendenhall, welcome to the Real Organic Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we probably met back at the NOSB meetings, even before Organic Farmers Association, I'm guessing. But we go back a few years, huh?
Yeah, it's nice to see you.
So tell us a little bit first. You have your own organic farm and in Iowa. I'd love to know a little bit about how you got interested in farming and what your farm looks like now before we dive into the political work that you do with Organic Farmers Association.
Yeah, sure. So I always wanted to be a farmer. I didn't grow up on a farming family, but I live in a small town in Northwest Iowa and there's farming all around me. But I did grow up during the farm crisis. And so I think, felt the emotional impact of a lot of family farms closing and consolidating and the stress around that. And there's a lot of conservation around me. And so there were a few farms who were grazing animals on pasture. And I just really liked the way that organic melds a lot of my interests, conservation, ecology, social justice. And, but I hadn't really, and so I always wanted to be a farmer, but no one in my family thought that was a good idea, just coming out of the farm crisis, a bad time to enter farming. I went to college in Maine and then met all these organic farmers there. And so it was kind of like eye-opening for me. I hadn't really seen a food farm before. I had never seen a farm where they grew vegetables or sort of like direct farm to consumer markets. And so a lot of possibilities just opened up. But I studied organic agriculture in grad school, interviewing farmers all over the world, and just really was testing out different kinds of production that I may want to do someday. And when the opportunity arose to move back to Iowa, I knew that I wanted to start my own farm. So we have a small farm for Iowa standards. We have 18 and a half acres. It's called Okoboji Organics. And I love animals. I was a vegetarian for about 12 years, but then really felt like my understanding of farming and shifting in food production shifted. And so I wanted to manage my own livestock to feed my own family, but also my community. So we raise certified organic pastured pigs, poultry, both chickens and turkeys. And then we have a few laying hens. That's a growing business. And just this year, I'm excited to be partnering with another female farmer who's starting her own enterprise on my land, growing organic vegetables and fruit. So we market it all locally out of the barn out of a little farm store in the barn.
So it's incredible to me that you grew up in Iowa and you had to go to Maine to see, people growing food for like us to eat, I'm curious, have you read Austin Farrick's Barrens? That book?
Oh, I've heard
he talks about Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he talks about the transformation of Iowa in his lifetime. Have you witnessed some of that? Just the popping of CAFOs all over the landscape?
Oh yeah, I really like live deep in that section of the state. There's Iowa has, I think we're number 6 in the country for number of certified organic farms. So there's a lot of organic production in Iowa. But where I live, it's it's a little bit more flat and has more of a feeling of Southwest Minnesota and in the plains topography. And so it is um, well suited to many, many thousands of acres of corn and soybean production and hog confinement buildings. So yeah, things have definitely shifted. The livestock auctions that used to be in every county are no longer there. The infrastructure for managing your own livestock is really diminished. But there are a lot of very vibrant organic fruit and vegetable farms across the state, just not necessarily in the county and surrounding counties. So I'm kind of an anomaly here. I think I'm one of 3 certified organic farms in my county and definitely the only female farmer.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I don't know. The 2 farms I think of that were part of the pilot project with the Real Organic Project were, I think, let's see, she's in Decorah, Iowa. I don't know how close you are to either Radiance Dairy, who was Francis Tickey's farm. He's now transitioned it to someone else and is retired. Or Hannah Breckville is in Decorah, Iowa. Are you close to either Fairfield, where Francis was, or Decorah?
Iowa's a big state, so Fairfield is about 6 to 7 hours from me,
Oh,
and
no way.
Decorah is like
Okay.
4 hours. Which
Okay.
when I went to college in Maine and we flew into Boston and had driven for 2 hours and had already driven through 3 states, we had to pull over and check the map because we are used to driving really long distance in just one state.
Okay, so yeah, their area was really hilly. I'm really interested in why Iowa. Like, why has that state gone so kind of the transition away from like the smaller, maybe 160 acres is something that comes to mind for some reason, family farm to now just extreme, acquiring your neighbors. Is there something unique to Iowa that's kind of made that happen? Because it is the parts I remember driving through, it's kind of hilly, which often tends towards more grazing and organic operations because you can't get that huge machinery through. But it sounds like the topography is quite different. So what is it about Iowa that has brought all the pig CAFOs there and everything?
Yeah, I think that's somebody's, PhD project to answer completely, but Iowa used to be much more diverse. We used to be, I think, in the top 3 in the country for production of wine grapes. But back in the 50s, we were hit very hard by the 2,4-D drift. And so early on, a lot of diversity was destroyed from 2,4-D drift. And then in the 1970s, 80s, we got hit very hard with the farm crisis and encouragement to scale up production, invest in big machinery, and a lot of family farms went out of business and had to consolidate family land to survive, or people moved off the farm, which left farms available to be purchased and consolidated into bigger farms. I think that was probably the biggest shift. Some of the past checkoffs really hurt the industry too, much more diversified. Independent pork farms were hurt by the pork checkoff, which put a lot of them out of business with unfair competition and having to pay into an industry that was really pushing consolidation in industrial pork market. So we haven't had great luck. And our topography in much of the state where it is flatter lends itself to large machinery, really big acreage. We are just below Interstate 90. Interstate 80 runs right through the middle of the state. So we have good transportation routes out east and west. But, still like the heart of Iowa agriculture is here. I just think that the emotional impact of the farm crisis really had a huge impact on our appreciation for rural life, our celebration of rural life, what it means to be a farmer. I really think that farmers should be celebrated as heroes and contributing. We're feeding our communities. And also, I think particularly organic farmers, we're stewarding clean water air, providing healthy food for our families. That's something to really celebrate. And I don't think we celebrate it enough. And folks weren't encouraged to continue family farms, but were encouraged to go into agribusiness or other fields. And so we've just sort of lost a lot of that support and vibrancy and market diversification, which led to industrial ag. Plus, we have a pretty powerful land grant that has with a lot of agribusiness around it. So the support for family farms in the same diversified way hasn't been here as maybe it continued in other states.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it seems like it's a similar story in other states too. But I'm curious. Your life is kind of like mine now, where you're juggling farm life and advocacy for organic farmers. A little bit more about like your journey to get towards advocacy. You said you studied graduate school. Where did you go? What did you study?
I studied biology in undergrad, and then I really wanted to learn more about organic farming, but I was looking at sustainable agriculture programs at the time. This was just before the national organic standards were released, and there really weren't any organic specific graduate programs at the time. And when I was talking to some of the existing programs, some professors were on board with the idea of organic agriculture, but some professors seemed to have been put in the program but didn't really believe in it. And I didn't want to be in a position where I was sitting in a classroom and having to defend my love for organic and my belief that it was a really the direction of agriculture that our country should be heading in, with professors who didn't agree. And so I decided to design my own master's program through a small college that unfortunately didn't survive the pandemic. Goddard College in Vermont had a long history of alternative progressive education. And so I decided to put my very small laptop in my backpack and travel to 8 different countries, working on organic farms, studying from farmers about what farming meant to them in their different countries under different political situations, and then working alongside them while I was studying for my stack of books.
And so okay, Kate, we got to go there a little bit. Can you tell me about some of the farms that you saw, what countries you went to, and what impact they had on you?
Yeah. I was young in my 20s, so I didn't really need much to be happy. So it was a lot of like sleeping on in crowded hostels and on in wherever I could find a place for my sleeping bag. But I farmed in Mexico on a very small farm, but then this farm served the sort of tourist industry of Cabo. And so I talked to a lot of, some expat farms, some of the Del Cabo tomato grower cooperative met with in Mexico, looked at some of the, local farming, but also serving the tourist industry there. Then I went to Chile and learned about exports. So I worked on an export asparagus farm there and interviewed a few different scales of agriculture, a diversified small scale from a professor at university who also did a lot of his own research on his own farm. Then I spent 3 months in New Zealand, Australia, and Japan. So in New Zealand, I took a permaculture course, and I studied on a diversified farm doing mushrooms and vegetables and using the sea for fertilization for seaweed. And in Australia, I worked on a biodynamic farm and really focused on biodynamic production, and went to the Sydney farmers market with this farmer, and again, interviewed a few different kinds of farms while I was there. And then in Japan, I worked on a farm that was doing traditional rice production and interviewed, I think, at least like 3 or 4 farms in every country I was in. And then I finished in Europe, and I was in the UK working on a sheep dairy and on a cow dairy. And then in Italy on a sheep dairy, and in Spain, I was on a diversified vegetable production, and then on an export organic olive oil farm.
Were there any, I mean, the only ones I knew there were Del Cabo, just because they're part of Real Organic too. Were there any just kind of farms that really taught you lessons that you're still kind of carrying with you now for your political activism for farmers? Were these all organic farms, first of all, or were there some kind of big industrial models to compare organic to?
I think most of them were certified organic. if they weren't, for just using, some of them were more like subsistence, so they may not have been certified. And this was a really long time ago, it was over 20 years
Right.
ago. So
Because
our national organic
yeah.
program was just getting started at the time. Um, I think what I took away from that experience most is that farmers all around the world are really farming organically for very similar reasons. They believe in the practices, they believe in soil health, they believe in making a positive impact to their communities and creating a clean environment for their families. And so that was a really affirming, common theme as I went, but also I saw how different political structures supported or hindered farmer success. And I think that's what drove me to want to return back to the United States and work on policy. It was very evident to me growing up during the farm crisis that policies did not support family farmers. And I wanted to provide families with more support and options so that they could be successful growing food for their communities and supporting their family on farms. And that it could be a career that people felt really proud about and that their communities really appreciated them for doing. And so policy was a place where I felt like I could make a big impact.
How did you find Organic Farmers Association then?
Well, I was in upstate New York for 10 years. So I was working with the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York. And while I was there, New York is such a diverse state, so it was a really fun place for me to land for about 10 years. And I learned about all different kinds of agriculture. It's a big dairy state, so learned a lot about dairy, made a lot of great connections. But what I liked most of all is working with all of the different NOFA chapters and MOFGA, so that whole Northeast region. And we did a lot of collaborative work together and shared a lot of success stories and things that didn't work so well, and really tried to support each other as a region. So I saw through that experience that we really needed to work more collaboratively as a nation to better support farmers across the whole country, and that we had a lot of lessons to learn from each other. And there was so much information to share to strengthen these state or region-wide organic farming efforts, and that there were a lot of places where nationally our voice would be stronger together. So I left New York because I wanted to start my own farm in my home state of Iowa. I met a lot of great Iowans in New York State, and sort of had the realization that like some of us needed to go back. You have to have folks, also entering your home state and contributing back to your home community. So that's where I wanted to farm. And as I was returning back and apprenticing on a local farm here, just to learn more about what it was like to run a livestock farm in Iowa, farmers and some organizations were meeting to talk about creating something like Organic Farmers Association. And they pulled me in to help with some surveys of farmers across the country to see if farmers wanted an effort like that to start. And so we got enough responses back that farmers were interested, or they were, maybe interested. And so we decided to go forward. And I had some time as I was starting my farm to be able to support that effort, and really sort of grew into the organization. But it's been such a reward to help found this organization that really is my dream job. And I feel so committed to supporting organic farmers to be successful, and hearing farmer stories from California to Maine to Georgia, and the different kind of markets and political systems that they're working in, and how can we learn from each other to create a stronger national organic movement that really supports farmers and holds them up as the heroes that they are.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was first going to those meetings, it was the first time I heard the National Organic Standards Board meetings. It was the first time I'd heard distinguishing between, well, you're part of the organic movement, and then the organic industry is over here, as if they were two different things. And really thought of it that way. Why do you think that kind of so late into the game? When was OFA formed?
In 2017.
Okay, so 17 years after the passing of the regulations, and of course, OFFA had been passed 10 years before that. So, why is it, do you think, that we felt like farmers' voices weren't being heard at the time, and Organic Farmers Association was needed?
Organic Farmers Association is the fourth time that an effort like this was tried. And the first three times it just didn't come to fruition. So when we were starting Organic Farmers Association, a lot of folks who were involved in the first effort reached out to me and shared their stories and really supported us through some advice and just a gratitude for trying it again and that they felt like it was really necessary. We really worked to bring in a lot of organizations from the beginning. And I think what really helped us start, it's hard to start an organization, as you know, but the Rodale Institute stepped up and served as our fiscal sponsor for the first 3 years of our existence and really made sure that we succeeded and that we got through all of the organizational development steps with some funding to provide some additional staff and, helped us with our first website and that type of organizational development support that gave us a very strong foundation so that when we were ready to go on our own, we could do that successfully.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what OFFA does.
So we were created by certified organic farmers to be a united voice for certified organic farmers on the national stage. So specifically in policy, but also in different, to respond for organic farmers in the face of a market crisis, to be a voice in the media, to represent certified organic farmers, to translate what's happening in policy to organic farmers so that they know and so they can respond and so they understand what changes are coming down the pike for their businesses and so that we're creating a place at the table for them. Organic Farmers Association, like I said, was created by farmers. We believe that farmers really created the organic movement in the United States and they deserve to be at the table driving its future. And that's the pathway we're trying to create for them. We create a lot of opportunities for farmers to tell us what their policy challenges are or just the challenges are on their farm. And then we work with them to identify those policy priorities. And also we have farmer work groups where we can really dig into an issue like crop insurance, for example. We have a very active work group where they're identifying the problems within crop insurance for organic farmers. They're identifying the solutions that would really help their businesses use that program successfully. And then we communicate that to the right USDA agencies or to Congress to create those fixes in policy so that farmers can succeed and use the tools that are available to them in a productive way for their businesses, because organic farms operate uniquely than conventional farms and those same tools don't always translate.
If you're a farmer and you're kind of new to the organic landscape, there's the Organic Trade Association, there's the National Organic Coalition. How does OFA kind of fit into those two others, and kind of what's your role that's different maybe from the voice that you're representing? I know it's very farmer centric, but kind of where was that real need? I feel like was something happening and just it felt like those voices weren't loud enough, or I'm just kind of curious because I talked to some farmers that are involved in both those organizations, and they feel like that is the political arm of the organic movement. And so I'm curious why OFA kind of feels like it's got a different slant than what those two are representing.
Yeah, and we work very closely with both of those other organizations, with the National Organic Coalition and Organic Trade Association. And I think we're much more powerful when we can work together on policy issues. We share a much stronger and more present enemy. So it behooves us to collaborate. But the National Organic Coalition is a coalition of all representatives of the organic movement. So they have environmentalists, consumer groups, farmer groups, businesses, food businesses as part of their collective, and they have to make decisions as a consensus in order to move forward. It's a great model, but it does sometimes, because it's consensus and it has all those trade groups, stakeholders together in one room, they may not represent farmers in the way that farmers want to be represented on an issue. And similarly, the Organic Trade Association represents, some typically larger farmers, but they do have some smaller farmers that are members, but they represent primarily the large trade groups. So large companies that are buying from farmers, processing products, they're the ones on the grocery shelves and the package containers, and they're most often buying ingredients from farmers. And so the interests of buyers and farmers aren't always on the same page. Buyers want to have affordable ingredients and farmers want to make a living wage and be successful business people. And so sometimes we need to be separate to have those two separate voices heard clearly. We try to bring our different representation to the table early so that we can work out any differences and come with a compromised or consolidated stand that we can all agree on going forward together. And but we can't do that without farmers having a really strong represented voice at the table. And that's what Organic Farmers Association brings. We are always asking farmers what they want and what they need. And when we don't know, we ask our farmer members in particular. Only our farmer members have a vote. And so we are really trying to authentically represent farmers' voices in every opportunity at every table that we're invited to. And, Congress calls us on organic farmer issues and want to know what farmers think about different things. And before Organic Farmers Association was here, it wasn't always clear who they should call. So we are really, present in DC and nationally to press to represent the viewpoints of farmers, what they need, what their high priorities are, how their businesses are faring under different political climates. I think we're stronger as farmer having a voice like Organic Farmers Association behind us.
And even amongst farmers, you might not always get agreement, but you have a really interesting democratic process for how you bring issues to the table. And then it culminates in this awesome fly-in where we get to hang out with each other and have a good time in addition to meeting and talking to our representatives. So I'm curious, what have some of the issues that have been prioritized by farmers year after year? What are some of the big ones?
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent since we started in 2017. So stopping organic import fraud and increasing NOP enforcement of the regulations uniformly and equitably has been a really top priority for farmers from the beginning. They want to operate in equitable marketplaces. They want to be successful. They don't want to be undercut by fraud. We all rely on organic integrity and consumer trust. And so it's a really high priority of farmers that that be upheld. Similarly, prohibiting hydroponics in organic certification has continually been in the top three priorities since that was, I think, introduced to our poll in maybe 2019. And so we're continuing to see that as a high priority for farmers. They want to see organic be in the soil. And we've continued to look to where we can represent that viewpoint at the National Organic Standards Board in Congress and in different opportunities for dialogue. Climate change has come up, diversity in organic agriculture has come up, fair markets, addressing consolidation in the organic market has also been in the top 5. And every year we update the farmer priorities that come in our annual survey. So you can check on our policy page and see what the top 10 priorities are this year. But the top 5 have been pretty consistent since we were created in 2017.
Yeah, let's dive into that first one. That imports fraud has been an issue that since I've been involved for the last 10 years as well, always has come to the top. And I thought that maybe we were getting on top of it a little bit. And then, we get back together and it seems like year after year, we still have stories where the ships are making it through, that are potentially fraudulent, likely fraudulent. We even had a story where one of the buyers tested just voluntarily and found fraud. So it's like the system that we have, checks and balances either through the NOP or the certification programs. I think it's by law, we have to do 5% or something like that of for testing of the operations need to be tested by the certifiers. And so, it's kind of one of those frustrating things where we think we're getting wins, and yet it still seems to be happening. Where are we with that now, in your opinion, with import fraud, particularly in grains?
I think we're definitely making progress. Talking to farmers who are a part of the creation of the National Organic Program, imports weren't even a part of the conversation. So they never envisioned 20 some years ago that the market would be this large and that we would be dealing with imports. So the program from the beginning wasn't really designed with the type of enforcement and with a collaboration of Customs and Border Protection to be monitoring organic at the border. The strengthening organic enforcement rule that we advocated for and a lot of members of the organic community advocated for was just implemented last March, in March 2024. And so we only have 1 year under our belt, but a lot of loopholes were closed. So now importers have to be certified, exporters have to be certified. A A lot more handlers came under certification. There's more checks and balances across the board. The National Organic Program has really been working with Customs and Border Protection, USDA APHIS to understand what certified organic is, how to look for. Now we have import certificates as a result of strengthening organic enforcement rule. So when a shipment is coming into the port, now the folks who are checking import vessels or rail or trucks know what to look for. And the National Organic Program is starting to get calls and folks are checking. So I think it will take some time for strengthening organic enforcement rule to put its teeth into more of the problem, but we're definitely making progress there. At the same time, the US is the largest organic consumer market in the world. And so our market here in the United States is over to $70 billion. There's a lot of incentive for folks to sneak in product as organic because the return is a lot greater. And so we'll continue to see that problem. And what folks in compliance at National Organic Program say is that it's just really hard to always follow the criminal's next move. And so we have to continually be adjusting our enforcement. So we're working on some legislation now led by farmers Amy Brook and Nate Powell-Palm, both grain farmers. Amy's from Nebraska, Nate's from Montana. So they bring similar but different perspectives. This is a pilot program focused on organic feedstuffs. So your typical grains, oil seeds, as a starting place to really have the National Organic Program identify what are the high risk imports within feedstuffs for the year. What are the criteria that the folks at the borders should be looking for, and what percentage needs to be tested for residue. It's just one marker. It's not going to be, the golden ticket to stop all fraud, but we have to have a lot of tools in the toolbox, and we have to have a bit more of a robust approach to protecting U.S. organic farmers who are really working hard to follow all the rules and are undergoing really intense inspections annually and a lot of paperwork. So we want to protect those markets and all the hard work they're putting into that. So this new piece of legislation is called OFFA. It was introduced this year from Senator Ricketts from Nebraska and Senator Smith from Minnesota. And it would require annual testing and an annual report to the Secretary of Agriculture about what they tested, how much did they find fraudulent, how much did they test and find clean, just to get a better sense and create more of a process for residue testing at the border, protecting the market so that domestic farmers are operating in a fair market.
Yeah, I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize, you mentioned APHIS, and I just have a plant pathology background. So that is the department that checks imports for possible pests and diseases. And if you have, whether it's organic or not, if you have something that's on their list of no, we don't want this in our country, it's not here yet, what they do is they spray the entire shipload. And then what needs to happen is that needs to actually not be sold as organic anymore. And that's something that who then has to pay the burden of that loss in marketplace value? Does that fall onto the farmer, the importer? Who takes that hit? And also, as a consumer, how do you ensure that you're actually getting, you no longer want to eat, if you think you're buying organic, you no longer want to eat something that's been sprayed anymore as organic. And so a couple points, just pointing out the importance of cross-institutional communication and understanding. And that was just starting to happen, right? That the USDA is working with APHIS. I've heard that APHIS is getting seriously defunded and cut. And so what does that mean for, organic integrity in terms of, have these things been sprayed? Have they been put into new boxes that are now conventional? Who cuts those? Who pays for those costs, those changes? Has some of that been worked out? Were we starting to work it out? Do you have any sense for where we are at the border and how things maybe have changed with the new administration?
I think we're making real progress. And OFFA was the next step. There's a lot of federal agencies that interact with agricultural imports for many reasons. Invasive species is one of them, making sure that those are kept out. And through the past 5 years, progress of the National Organic Program working with this interagency task force, they've now established a process where if an organic product is fumigated, those stickers of the peppers get peeled off and that product is not sold as organic. And everyone knows now, the process and to be more aware of the restrictions on organic. What we are concerned about is the reduction of some of these really key USDA agencies, the National Organic Program being one of them, but Customs and Border Protection, APHIS, we're all working on this effort together. And the National Organic Program has finally gotten enough staff to do the work needed, and we're asking it to do more and more work. So any reduction in that small agency and program is really concerning. So we know that through the deferred resignation offers, we've lost anywhere between 20 to 30% of the National Organic Program. Just recently in April, the Organic Trade Association, the National Organic Coalition, and the Organic Farmers Association, with 942 farms, 130 organizations, and 307 businesses, signed a letter to USDA Secretary Rollins asking her to not include the National Organic Program on the next set of USDA workforce reduction, because those employees as part of the program are really essential to protecting this market for farmers and that consumers trust. So we haven't received a response yet. We are hoping that we can not lose anyone else from the National Organic Program because they are already stretched thin. It's concerning for organic integrity. It's concerning for the increase of organic imports we see coming into the country, to be able to actually monitor them. So it's something that we're watching together as a community and that we're talking about strategy for, but we are also asking USDA and the Secretary not to lose any more staff from the National Organic Program. They do have a hiring freeze, so we know that 20 to 30% they can't hire back right now, so hopefully we don't lose anyone else. The return on investment for investing in the National Organic Program is really high. So for every $1 invested in the National Organic Program, we see $3,000 reinvested in the U.S. economy, in retail value for the U.S. economy. So it's a really good return on investment. That's taxpayer money working and being really efficient, serving a really important purpose for American farmers and for American consumers. So it's a high priority for us.
Yeah, especially the import fraud. There's so much corn and soy production here domestically that it's really hard to see that that because and you can actually see direct correlations, right? When we had greater organic imports, we were seeing a reduction in the production of organic, the conversion of organic in our own country. And so at least knowing that it's not fraudulent makes such a big difference for what's happening to farmers here. So I think that's kind of one of the universally across the board, everybody believes in this. It's bipartisan. Let's just make sure that U.S. farmers are competing against actually organic grain production. Aside from that, I remember when I went into Bennett's office, I was so surprised from his response. I was talking about, we're basically exporting our agriculture right now. Like it keeps growing. We're relying on 60% now of our fruits and vegetables are being imported. And then I was talking about this as a concern, there are a lot of concerns. Some of it's just like, in times of crisis like COVID, we're gonna be able to feed ourselves. There's kind of some larger issues, but just for our local businesses and things. So I was talking about this particularly with tomatoes and how the price point just to be able to play has been ever decreasing. And so, it's like I don't even want to sell. I can't sell at the grocery stores, kind of shrink my farm back because the imports are so cheap. It's just driving me really away from those markets. I was talking about that with him, and he said, well, for every import, we try to create an export opportunity for our farmers. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's so not how the organic community thinks. First of all, small farms aren't really built up for the export market. And wouldn't it make more sense to get my tomatoes on my shelf locally, as opposed to just, having to somehow, okay, you guys are bringing tomatoes in from Peru or Mexico or wherever, and they're on my local shelf, and then somehow I get big enough to then export to back to Mexico or wherever. It just seemed a little crazy. And I'm curious, we just had a farmer gathering in California, and we were talking about how, has the movement somehow been impacted by our success? And, are there thoughts about how do we kind of get that spirit back of what organic meant in the beginning? And I feel like as it's grown, really organic just means here's food that does not have prohibited substances on it. And so to you, what more does organic mean to the farmers that you've worked with? What is that larger vision of organic? And I guess the second part would be how do we get some of that back?
Yeah, great questions. I mean, first, just to touch on the globalization of organic, I don't think it makes sense for really like any country to to have that import export. We all benefit by having more robust local food systems. I think we saw that in the pandemic, that we can't rely on our nation's system of agriculture as a globalized system does not work always. It's not really a great national security model, and we would be better served, and other countries would be better served by more local independent farms growing food for their communities and supporting diversified agriculture so that where we can be innovative and grow new crops more locally, we do. And there's going to have to be global trade because we like to eat things from all over the world, but let's focus that on things that we can't grow locally and vice versa for other countries. Through my many years of talking to farmers from all over the world, farmers are typically farming because they love to get their hands in the soil. They want to grow healthy food for their communities. They believe in clean environments for their families and their neighbors. And so I don't think that that industrialization and like the soul of the organic movement is really changing in the farmer's vision. I don't think we have a great infrastructure remaining or policies that support local, regional food systems, and we need to do a better job of rebuilding those. I have to drive a really far distance. It's not great for stress on my animals to get my animals to a processing facility. It wasn't always like that. I could bring my animals, much closer 2-3 decades ago. And that was very common across the state of Iowa and much more common across the country as well. And so we've lost a lot of the infrastructure for local food system. We need to bring it back. There have been policies to try to do that in, fits and starts, but it would benefit our country and our communities and our national food security if we could take a step back from our existing models and really relocalize everything. That's a big task, and we've been on this sort of industrialized train for a long time, but what works in a factory and manufacturer model doesn't necessarily work for food that needs to feed people all across the country with perishable product. We'd be much better served with local food systems. So how do we get there? I think that's part of why we need a stronger Organic Farmers Association. We are advocating for those types of policies along with allied organizations working with family farmers on the conventional and regenerative side that also benefit for those regional and local food system movements of policy and rebuilding of our infrastructure. So we just need more pressure from the public, but we also need support from Congress, identifying the type of local jobs that would bring, the type of expertise, again, like returning a lot of dignity and honor and appreciation for people working in our food system, from harvesting crop to working in a butcher shop, from working in a slaughterhouse, all across, from driving the truck, picking up milk. All of those folks are so important to feeding our communities, and they just don't get the appreciation and the reverence that they deserve.
Yeah, I have a friend in Germany, and she was talking about organic, and we were talking about things like the processing and how interconnected
I think we often forget about the distribution and how the food system is really so much bigger than just the farmer and the end eater, and how organic certification just allows. And she used the most beautiful terminology that kind of sticks with me. And it's funny because, English is just one of the many languages she speaks. And she said, you really are creating an organic landscape. And that, I was talking about how, even like an organic pig, for example, has to eat organic feed stuff. And so, if you collect from a local school and that food isn't then certified organic, you've then lost the ability for that pig to be an organic pig. And that's when she used this word organic landscape. And so, then it gives you like, if the organic, pig farmer has an affordable feed source that is certified organic, right? Then you've got a clear ally towards getting organic food into schools. And we can all work together if this landscape of interconnectedness, kind of weaves together this what organic can be. And it's like without each other, we can never get to that end point because we all depend on each other all the way throughout. So even creating an add-on label like the Real Organic Project, if we don't get the mills involved too to separate the real organic product, we're never going to be able to see that end product on the shelf. And so that concept of our organic landscape, I think, is a really beautiful thing. And a lot of eaters aren't necessarily aware of how many steps are between the farm and the end source. And of course, we try to shorten that distance as much as possible. But even like a local livestock farmer, you have to get to an organic processing facility, correct, in order for that to be an organic animal in the end. So anyway, any thoughts about how complicated the system is and kind of what we're up against in terms of creating an organic landscape here in the US?
Well, we have to make new allies and we have to bring in more players in the food system to understand what organic is and want to include organic in that whole system. I think that the USDA investment in the Transitioning to Organic Partnership Program in the prior administration was towards that effort. We brought in so many new entities into helping farmers learn about organic practices, decide if they wanted to start that transition to organic journey. And at the same time, because they have different connections, they're looking for now like more processors in new areas and more cold storage facilities that would support certified organic product. And so we have to invest in this new system. And the TOP program really helped put some of that new infrastructure and some of those new players into place. We've created a wider network to better support farmers through that whole food system, but continued investment. So the TOP program, we just heard word because this was one of the programs that had been frozen by the current administration as they've been doing their review, but it just came out of USDA review and it will be continued to the end of the program, but the deadline will be moved up. So some of the real, I think, core aspects that organic farmers need from TOP that we've identified, hoping that can be instituted in the next farm bill under this current administration with their own sort of stamp on supporting organic farmers and our local and regional food systems going forward, because those are dollars that stay in your community that really help revive rural communities. We have to preserve rural jobs and rebuilding these food system components for all different kinds of agriculture all across the country really helps make that possible. So it's a great investment for our country overall. And we're hoping that a farm bill will happen, the next farm bill, and that organic and the infrastructure that TOP sort of started putting into place can continue. We have the largest consumer market in the United States. We can serve that local market a lot more with local product, but we have to invest and help farmers along that journey, understand certification, keep certification affordable and accessible to farmers, look for ways to make it risk appropriate and scale appropriate so farmers aren't being asked to keep records that don't apply to their farms, that those inspections and the records are relevant to the type of operation and scale and don't become too expensive and take too much time for them to be able to participate in the program. We're making progress there, and we just need to keep the momentum up.
Hey, one of the programs that's really popular with small farms is the organic cost share. Have you heard anything about whether that's going to carry on this year?
So it's one of the things that this coalition is working on advocating for. The Organic Farmers Association, the National Organic Coalition, and the Organic Trade Association, among many of our state partners, we're all really advocating for continuation of the organic cost share program. It is what they call an orphan program in the Farm Bill, so it doesn't have mandatory funding. So when the Farm Bill gets extended, it has to be specifically funded in that extension. And it was in the 2024 extension included with additional funding, but it wasn't included in the 2025 extension. So cost share is not currently funded for 2025. We know that that's really going to impact small farms in particular, and we may lose some farms because they won't be able to afford certification. And that's really disappointing to me and to farmers who are working so hard to provide all these great environmental services. There's countries like Denmark that the government pays for all the certification fees so that more farmers can participate, and that the process of certifying, the voluntary process of paying to be certified organic, is not a barrier to being counted. We need more support for all the work that organic farmers are doing for our water, our food, our air, our wildlife habitat, saving soils, creating healthy soils for healthy soil or microorganisms, and also keeping our soil on our land. There's so many great environmental services that farmers are voluntarily providing without any compensation in return, and they're actually paying for the privilege to provide the public with all these great services. So we could better serve organic farmers. They're doing a lot on a little, and organic cost share is a very small program in the Farm Bill with a really big impact on farmers being able to be counted and stay in the program and have access to new markets. And it's a high priority for us. We know it's going to affect farmers if it's not funded. We've been advocating through appropriations, but I don't know if we will get there for 2025, but we will not stop asking for it.
Yeah, I know we had it's at 750 is what it was. And, it's about at a minimum about $1,800 to get certified per scope, meaning if you have crops or livestock or handling, you would have to pay that 3 times if you have all those things. And we were advocating for it to go up to 1,500. And so now we have nothing. And I think it's going to really impact the number of small farms that are involved. And so that's definitely one that I think across the board, everybody feels really strongly. It does always seem so backwards that the people that aren't spraying these horrible things are the ones that are, having to prove that they are, organic. And we always think that that's so backwards. Wouldn't it be lovely if the government was actually visiting people spraying the chemicals and making sure that they're doing it responsibly? Those chemicals are being labeled. That seems like it's in an alternate universe right now. We're fighting for, what we can do as an organic community. And that seems to be label ourselves as opposed to getting what I think everybody would much rather have, just information about what actually is being sprayed on the conventionally or chemically grown food. You, Kate, had one of the best answers I've ever heard when, the OFFA has this awesome opportunity to get to go to the USDA, and we were sitting with the National Organic Program, and they said, we don't want organic to be an elitist food item. We would like, it to be affordable. And they were justifying hydroponics as inorganic as a reason why we want organics to be more affordable. And I don't know if you can recreate the moment, but it gave me chills. And I'm wondering if you have a response right now in this moment to that. We don't want organic to be elitist. We want it to be affordable. And so therefore, we're going to compromise what it means.
Yeah, I can try. I think that Organic Farmers Association believes that organic farmers deserve to earn a living wage for their farming. It's very hard work. They deserve to pay their farm workers a living wage for their work. And it's not organic farmers' responsibility to solve our social problems that create the need to keep food prices so low because people aren't making enough money to pay the cost of production that it costs for folks to raise clean, healthy food. So our system is not working, and it's not organic farmers' responsibility to fix it. I think organic farmers want to be able to provide affordable, healthy food to their communities, and they're doing that in many cases in many different ways, being really creative, selling things for less than the cost to produce. In some cases, they have sliding scales for community-supported agriculture for people who can afford to pay more, are covering people who can afford to pay less. And we're creating a lot of opportunities to try to meet communities' needs, but it's a larger problem that should not be the responsibility of organic farmers to fix. We need Congress to really be looking at prioritizing healthy food for everyone. And organic farmers are working really hard to provide as much as they can. We could be producing more food, and we could be helping more farmers transition to organic so that more was available right here at home. And the more local you can keep it, the cheaper you're reducing shelf time, you're reducing processing costs, you're reducing storage. And so all of that, in the end, it's a large investment of time. It will take many years to get us back to where we were when we had more of a functional local regional food system. But that's the way to do it, to increase food security and increase our nation's food security.
I kind of think of organic integrity as like this bubble, and there's so many ways we could get at it, and so OFFA has taken that kind of policy angle to fight for organic integrity through policy. Real Organic Project is looking at marketplace access by creating an add-on seal. I'm curious how when I talked to Francis Ticky, who was part of the Real Organic Project at the beginning, he thought, we're just going to need a Real Organic Project for a short time. As soon as we win, a few of these big issues like confinement, the chicken porches at the time, the organic, oh gosh, what was it called? Where the livestock, the young ones, origin of livestock. Thank you. Which we seem to have closed that loophole now. But as soon as we tick off a few of these things where we've gone wrong, he said, we won't need a Real Organic Project. And then recently he said, I realized that was flawed, that we're always going to need a Real Organic Project because there's always going to be this industry pressure to weaken the standards. How do you see the role of the Real Organic Project into the future?
Yeah, well, my farm is a part of the Real Organic Project, and I know a lot of other folks involved in Organic Farmers Association have decided to sign on as well. I think organic farmers are really trying to farm as close to nature and mimic ecology systems as they can. And so that is a really complex, diverse system to try to strive for. And so organic farmers are always learning. We're always striving to do better. We're always striving to perfect our systems, provide better pest management, more ecologically balanced agricultural systems that are really existing in the culture of farming and food and our ecology around us. And so that's what I think the Real Organic Project is doing. It's creating a higher expectation for those farmers who want to strive for it. I do think at the same time, we need to continue to work as an organic farming movement to maintain high standards of the National Organic Program. And we can do both at the same time. And it's important that we do both at the same time. It's going to be, maybe a particular kind of consumer that's really going to want to see all those additional efforts by a farmer that really meets their envision of what organic is. And the Real Organic Project makes it easy for them to find those farms. I'm hoping that we can see more and more Real Organic Project farms highlighted in grocery stores, and it becomes just really standard practice. At the same time, we need to continue to educate consumers and farmers about strong standards, improving the standards, pushing rulemaking. I think that's going to be one of the challenges for this administration because they want to roll back regulations, but organic is different. It's a voluntary regulation that organic farmers are signing up for. We're asking for it. We're asking for more regulation so we can clarify the standards that we're presenting to consumers. And so we want to keep moving forward. Unfortunately, we just heard that the Agricultural Marketing Service is looking to rescind the more recently introduced mushroom and pet food standards. That's not what we need right now. Farmers want more clarity around what they're doing to provide these markets. They want new markets. The new pet food standards opened up a whole new pet food market for folks, especially for cat food, because it allows the addition of taurine, which is an ingredient that cats need. And so we want to keep improving the markets. We want to push National Organic Standards Board recommendations into rulemaking and evolve the national organic standards. We need to do that. Unfortunately, the government works at a much slower pace than we do on our own farms, but we need to keep the pressure on, keep encouraging the administration that these voluntary regulations should not be included in the for every one new regulation, 10 regulations have to be taken off the plate. We need to keep adding organic regulations. These are voluntary. They don't fall under the same bucket. And I think ROP farmers are so energized and passionate about the way that they're farming. They're the perfect farms to join in the type of advocacy work that Organic Farmers Association is laying out. It's been so great to have formerly Dave Chapman, a founding member of Organic Farmers Association, and to have you and Lindley, a part of the Organic Farmers Association in DC, advocating for your own farm and other farmers in your region. Every real organic project farm should be a member of Organic Farmers Association so that we hear your voice, so we hear your policy priorities, so we're representing you in DC and lifting up the values that you hold dear that are a part of Real Organic Project in the future of organic.
Sometimes I feel like there's a lot to learn in the history of the organic movement in terms of needing a law in the first place. And so many times I hear, oh, why don't you just go off and create your own standard? Why do you have this kind of USDA organic as a funnel in order to be a certified real organic project? And there are many, many real organic farms out there that just choose not to get certified because they don't need access to markets. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about the need for government's involvement in organic and why that USDA certified organic, no matter if it spirals, how bad it gets, why having the government as part of that, as part of creating what organic is, what does that offer the organic movement? What did the people who fought for those laws in the first place, what did they see that maybe we're forgetting right now when it's like, oh, let's just walk away with it, it's so corrupt, that reaction that some of us have to just abandon it all and start over? What might you want to tell them that you're so aware of that clearly you're fighting for USDA organic to continue to have meaning?
Yeah. Well, the organic movement in this country really started from organic farmers and working with folks who, it's kind of different in different states and regions, but farmers in many cases got together and wanted to create a certification agency to represent the way that they were farming. And, different people came into that, but farmers have always been a part of management committees and advisory boards for those certification agencies. It was farmers and members of those certification agencies that actually approached the U.S. Department of Agriculture for a government program, for a public-private partnership, because it had gotten so big. And it was very hard for consumers to navigate slightly different standards from one region of the country to the other, and to make sure that organic over here is the same thing as organic over here within our large country and our large organic market. So I think that it was a good decision. It's been a challenge to navigate our creative organic spirit, very passionate about values, into a government system, but we have managed to create a sense of democracy really through that system. And we are quite organized as an organic farmer movement in response, especially now with groups like Real Organic Project and Organic Farmers Association, to respond to things and keep it honest. In other countries where they don't have a government organic program, they're not managing import fraud and farmers' needs as well. I think as we are in this country, we are the largest global market of organic products, and it would be very hard to manage that organic market without the government's involvement. We would not have access to Customs and Border Protection. We would not have access to APHIS at the ports. And so what I have found through this evolution of, monitoring and trying to curtail organic import fraud is that as soon as a shipment comes in and leaves the port and gets distributed into the organic supply chain, it's almost impossible to get it back. And so we would lose all of that oversight. The government plays a really important role to protecting domestic certified organic production because it's so involved in trade. It also really helps manage, what we say is organic is consistent across the country. we all have agreed and are required to be reviewed on a regular basis. Certification agencies are accredited on a regular basis. They're following the same national organic standards, interpreting in the same way. And there have been cases where certification agencies have not been following the interpretation in the same way, and they have had to make changes as a requirement to stay a certification body, or they have left the program. And that's a result of the National Organic Program. We need to continue to fund it. An defunded or reduced funded National Organic Program cannot do its job. We're a very small program. It needs to probably grow as our market continues to grow. So we're talking a lot about this under the current climate where funding federal positions is being reviewed and reduced. But in this case, the National Organic Program is protecting 28,000 certified organic operations that are domestic. And we need that oversight. And it's very efficient program. So I think there's only 85 employees, or there were before we lost this last 20 to 30%. And the return on investment for our economy is huge. So it's necessary. We need to advocate for it. We need to keep progressing in the number of regulations that we're putting out, and that all goes through the government process. I think there's a lot of improvements to be made in the National Organic Program, but I think overall we're on the right track. And we just need to keep working to improve, keep farmers' voices a part of that process, making sure that farmers are continually, annually sitting in that room with the National Organic Program's lead, and that they're hearing farmers' stories about what's going on in their farms, what are their challenges, what things are they asking the National Organic Program to improve. They learn a lot by hearing farmers, and that's part of why bringing farmers to Washington, D.C. every year is a core program of the Organic Farmers Association. We will continue to do that, and we'll continue to advocate for a U.S. Department of Agriculture that supports and protects organic farmers.
Hey, when you were talking, you were describing how one of the reasons why we had the USDA was in order to make sure that the standards were consistent all the way across. And right now, we don't have that situation with hydroponics. We've got these certifiers that are saying we won't do it. We didn't have that situation with CAFO porches. Even I think the USDA and Bay State, there was a lawsuit over whether or not they had to certify these porches, and the USDA said, yes, you do. And so we have sort of these big kind of integrity issues where the organic community and the USDA have not seen eye to eye, and it's been really fracturing to organic and to the community. It's sort of a lesson, I feel like, to the USDA that if you want this thing to maintain integrity, you better listen to the constituents, because it does create chaos among the organic world when we have these areas where we can't see eye to eye. And I always like to point out how in Europe, they would never certify a porch, chicken porch or hydroponics. And the organic industry has continued to grow, and they have much higher percentage of organic land. And so there is something to be said for integrity and growth going hand in hand, instead of it's one or the other, right? This concept of this big tent, and then we can grow organic to be massive. But then I think people walk away from it because they're not finding the food that they would like to find. So there is this argument for higher integrity and growing the movement kind of hand in hand.
Oh, for sure. I mean, organic is definitely a values-based market, and farmers are farming this way because they really care about their environment, their animals, their consumers' health, their own family's health. It's a values-based market, and the government does not always operate that way. So it's not a perfect match, but it's probably the right match, and it continues to require a lot of advocacy, consumer and farmer oversight, pushing for higher standards, higher integrity. But I do think it's the right framework for a system forward. It's just not, it's a little warty, and we need to keep working on it to improve it. But we do have opportunities for farmers' voices to be heard. We need to keep amplifying those voices, making sure that farmers are always at the table, that these areas of integrity and places where we don't agree within the organic movement are being talked about. We have discourse around it. We're looking for ways to fix the problem. And I think that is happening. We saw porches, finally being addressed through the organic livestock and poultry standards rule. We have continued to bring hydroponics forward to the national organic standards as a priority issue. I think, hopefully in the next 5 years, we'll see some response to that. We have a new director at the National Organic Program. We know that consumers want soil-based product. We know that farmers want soil-based organic. So we'll continue to advocate for that. We're operating in a country that has a culture of really high capitalism and industrial models, and it doesn't always protect small businesses. And making sure that values are at the heart of organic is our responsibility as participants.
Do you feel like that last organic poultry and livestock rule will get rid of the 2-story chicken houses that we were seeing? Have we seen the decertification of a Herbrooks or, some of those facilities yet?
I think the language to do so is there. We have to have enough NLP staff and enforcement power in order for them to make sure that the rule is enforced. That's going to be the crux. If we don't have enough people working in the program and we don't continue to broaden our education of other USDA agencies and folks on the ground of what the organic regulations are and what needs to be reviewed and enforced, it's going to be hard to enforce the rules. These are rules that farmers really need to be successful. So we need a strong national organic program in order to be able to do so.
Do you think that there's a role for the eaters in all of this? Because I guess where's the incentive for the USDA to actually enforce that? I remember that like Debbie Stabenow was in Michigan and Herbrooks is in her state, and she was very much against this rule. And it's just kind of like, there's a direct economic correlation there. What is the consumer role in terms of getting some of the awareness that this has to happen? Where is that pressure point for everybody to be more involved?
Yeah,
because we seem to be losing in terms of the pressure points. There's a much bigger microphone for a lot of those entities to reach the USDA.
Consumers have always been really important on pushing high organic integrity. Farmers can't just do it alone. Not every state is an agricultural state, and many states have really high consumers of organic. And so we need everyone working together on a similar message, advocating for what we need for organic farmers to be successful. Consumers have stopped a lot of really bad ideas the USDA have had about organic. And
that's true.
We need to work together.
The big three at the beginning is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do we have some other big wins like that? The big three?
What are the big three in your mind?
Like at the very beginning, I think the USDA was trying with the regulations in 2000. They said that they wanted radiation, GMOs, and there was one other thing that they wanted to bring in that came from the top down, and the organic community just completely lit fire and said it might have been sewage sludge. No way, these are not organic. And because of the amount of response, they went away. They're not part of organic anymore.
I know that there have been examples since I've been in the policy realm, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. But consumers have consistently been an outreach point for farmer issues. And so when we're bringing farmer issues that have a broader impact, where we know consumer voices will be helpful, we ask all of our farmers to talk to their consumers to get them to weigh in as well. And we know that those consumer comments have an impact. I know when consumers show up on the National Organic Standards Board to testify, it makes a big impact to the National Organic Standards. We don't often get consumer participation in that arena, and we probably need more of it, especially when it's supporting what farmers need, because farmers are busy farming. And part of that's why Organic Farmers Association is here, so we can tell farmers when something has come up where we really need their voice to be amplified. But consumers aren't on the same schedule. They can respond when farmers are busy in the fields, and we really need to be working together to amplify this values-based system that we all really believe in and that we want to keep growing to be stronger, definitely not weakened, and progressing so that the markets expand and our domestic markets expand and we can continue and grow organic production here at home.
That was one of the big lessons from Europe that I've recently learned is they get these organic policies in place. Something like TOP would be would help to make it either in the Farm Bill or supported by the USDA because you would have a much larger movement. You would have the Sierra clubs, environmental groups, things like that supporting it as well. So I really see this as like all hands on deck because organic farming, even if you're not consuming it, benefits everybody because there's lack of toxins in your environment and the carbon sequestration in the farming. There's so many things that benefit us all. Kate, is there anything that I didn't get a chance to discuss with you that means a lot to you?
For me, working at Organic Farmers Association to help organic farmers be successful, to amplify their voices in DC, to bring farmers together to learn that even though they are operating in very different markets and very different regional structures and climates, organic farmers are, for the most part, really farming for the same reasons, and that we share so much more than we have differences. It is such a joy for me to be in this role and help organic farmers bring their voices forward, to be heard, to create relationships with their representatives. I just encourage all certified organic farmers to get involved. We want to hear your voices. We want to connect you with your representatives and your senators and make sure that they hear your voice and that they know what you need to be successful so that we can continue to push policy towards more supportive policies for organic farmers. It's something I believe in to my core, and we just need more organic in this country. And thanks so much for the opportunity to have me on the show, Lindley, and really believe in what the Real Organic Project is doing and think that there's so much great synergy between what we're striving for and what you're striving for as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, thanks, Lindley.
Thank you for listening to the Real Organic Podcast. Our movement is growing because you're subscribing and sharing these podcasts with your friends. So keep it up and leave us a rating and a review as well so that others can find us. You can find a video version of this interview on our newly designed website, realorganicproject.org, or on our YouTube channel. And you can join us every Thursday for a new episode featuring voices from the organic movement. See you next time.